Hi, I'm Cheryl Kelland. Before I start, drop in the chat who here has written at least one angel check and who hasn't written their first check yet, but is super excited to do that. I want to get a sense of experience level in this audience. Or show hands or do something. Oh, I love excited to get started. First time angels, love it. I love 2 handfuls of checks. I have 4 handfuls of checks, maybe. I see some names in here that I know some checks that you've written. I've been in with a few of you on deals. Amazing. All right, it looks like we've got a good mix. I love seeing 15 companies. That is awesome and incredible. It's a great number, actually. All right, so what we're going to do today, I'm going to spend some time to talk about the math that got me over the hump writing checks. Because like a lot of people here, I've maybe, that have written 1 or 2 or that are waiting to get started. I was in that position for a long time. And there were a few things I learned along the way that really changed the game for me. And I want to share those. Breen talked a bunch about my background. I am a longtime tech product concept to launch product expert. I did my first startup that I was the founder of about 12 years ago. We were VC backed and Kickstarter backed. We were the sports watch Steve Jobs would have built, is what they called us in the market. We had a great run. We were the top rated fitness wearable on Amazon. It was ultimately really hard to raise money for a consumer electronics product. So even though we shipped a great product, we wound that company down. My second company was a healthcare fintech. I raised about $17 million from VC for that company. We grew super rapidly to $10 million in ARR. And I exited and sold the company about 2.5 years ago. There were some people on my cap table who were very excited about that exit. I was not one of them. I did not make off like a bandit financially. And that's fine because that startup led me to a side hustle as EIR at Techstars, where over the last 2 years, I've worked with close to 200 pre-seed, like pre-accelerator founders, all of them female. And it led me to angel investing and it led me to my current startup, Play Money. So it's all sort of part of the journey. Sort of the reason I get to talk today is because I did become an angel investor over the last 18 months. This is the portfolio I've built. My goal is to write about 15 checks a year. I'm a loud and proud baby check writer. I write checks from between $1,000 and $2,000, sometimes on special purpose vehicles designed for smaller check writers, sometimes directly on the cap table. I have no shame in writing small checks. My goal is to write a bunch of checks, and you'll learn today why I do that. I also made my first LP investment, again, a small LP investment, but I did it because I loved the fund manager. I loved how she operated, and it increased the diversity of my overall portfolio. When I got into angel investing, though, and we all know, like, angel investing, it's like first check calls game. If you write those first checks, you get to decide what problems get solved and who gets to solve them. And that is a really powerful thing. When I started getting into learning how to angel invest, I never intended to write checks. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get into angel investing so I could learn how early stage investors thought, so I could be a better mentor to my Techstars founder, and so I could be a better founder myself. Now I know that first check calls game, so I was frustrated because I was seeing things and I wanted to invest, but it didn't occur to me that I could, because I was sure I didn't have the knowledge to do that. And I was sure I didn't have the money to do that. And that's actually not surprising that I thought that. Mm, thirsty today. Um, because the model out there on how to be an angel investor, it a lot of people talk about it like it's like the VC model, right? You make a few really high conviction, big dollar bets. You double down on those bets over time. You need to know an industry really well and have to be able to diligence. And you definitely have to be able to add some kind of tangible value on the cap table. And I mean, think about it. I was a startup founder and I heard that and I was like, whoa, that feels really intimidating and really expensive. Um, Turns out it's also wrong and frankly dangerous. But it was keeping me on the sidelines. I sat and watched deals go by and joined groups and learned things for 6 months, almost 9 months actually, um, without writing my first check. Um, but the thing that was always in my mind, I wouldn't have even questioned those things if I had the knowledge or the money. But the thing that was bothering me all the time was that what every other person angel investing said to me was like, oh, yeah, I angel invest, but I expect to lose all my money. That made no damn sense to me. VCs were making a lot of money, but angels were expecting to lose it all. I didn't get it. And that was the thing that tormented me. And on the positive side, as Jill, my co-founder here knows, I love math. I can geek out about the dumbest things. So I dug into that math. Um, and there was some great research published out of AngelList at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic, that no one looked at. And it looked at all the deals that went through AngelList, and they've got a beat on pretty much every startup in the market that raises money. And they looked at it over decades. And really, the TLDR on that is angels are not small VCs. We shouldn't be investing like VCs. And take a step back here. VCs, their job is they are investing other people's money. Their game is to be in the top 5 or 10% of all funds, or else it doesn't matter because they're never going to raise another fund. And this is why actually as VCs, I think like 25% or 30% of VC funds actually lose money, because they are gunning for a few really amazing bets that goes through the moon. That is the game they are playing as professional fund managers. We as angels, I mean, unless you're trying to be a VC in the future, at least I have different goals. I love all the great non-ROI things about angel investing. I've met new friends, I've learned new industries, I've furthered my professional career. And I also want to outperform public markets because this is an investment. And I'm willing to take a little bit of downside protection, or maybe forego the biggest opportunities to maybe not lose all my money, right? This is how most of us think as individual investors when we're not trying to be the top 5% of all investors out there. Otherwise, we lose our job. So in that world of thinking like an angel and an individual investor, what the data shows is that portfolio size matters more than company picking. And when I say matters more, not just a little bit more, but it's really all that matters. This is counterintuitive, and we're going to go back to that in a little bit, but portfolio size is all that matters. So I'm going to try talking through this a little bit and illustrate what that means. So of any given batch of startups, randomly picked from the universe of startups, what you're going to see is that about 75% of, and this is taken from early stage bets at the pre-seed and seed stage, when the company is just forming, they may not have product market fit. It's the kind of companies we all see as angel investors. So what you'll see in that pool of companies is that over time, 75% of those companies will return 0 to 1x. For 70%, 5% of them, you are lucky if you invested, if you get your money back, and a whole bunch of them will go to 0. I'm gonna be really honest, I'm a pretty damn good founder, and I have not returned money to most of my investors in my last 2 startups. It's the nature of the game. within that broad pool of startups, about 25% will have a strong show of it. They'll return 5 to 10x of your investment. And then somewhere in there, sometimes within that 25%, there's a big home run, something that doesn't return 5 to 10x, but like 100x or 1000x. There's an Uber in there. There's an Airbnb in there. Few and far between, but when they hit, they're ginormous. So if you look at this kind of distribution, you think if you're a VC, you're getting paid to try your darndest to figure out who is going to be that company in that tiny little green wedge. And you're going to think you know who they are, and you're going to try to help them get there, and you're going to double down on them. And boy, if you hit it, you've got a top 10 percentile fund, you're going to raise another fund, you're a hero. And if you miss it, well, your fund might go to zero, but there's a really long window on knowing that. So you'll probably get to play another cycle or two in the game. If you're an individual angel, if you make 1 or 2 bets, even if you make 10 bets, all your bets are likely to end up just on a probability basis in that light purple area where they're going to zero. However, if you make more bets, you will sample from that full gamut of outcomes, and something magical happens, right? What would have been a lottery ticket when you make 1 or 2 bets or 5 bets suddenly transforms into something that looks like a more predictable, high-performing asset class. And with the way startups return over there, if you have a predictable, high-performing asset class, you can feel pretty good that it's going to outperform public markets and give you a shot at a massive return in there. The math shows this really clearly. I was, eyes wide when I saw this. I was even more eyes wide when I saw what constitutes enough shots on goal, enough bets to make those lottery tickets turn into that high-performing asset class. The answer is 30. I could show you a ton of math. I'm going to show you a link that shows all the ton of math by the end of this presentation. But the TLDR on it is once you get to about 30 investments, the flip happens and the range of returns starts to narrow and get more predictable. What I said, right? Portfolio size matters more than company picking. That's any 30 bets, right? If you are investing in credible companies, credible backable companies, it really doesn't matter which ones you pick. This is what the math shows, right? As long as you get to about 30 over a reasonable period of time, the portfolio math and the logic and the averages and the power law start to take over. Which says to me, the math says this, we are already better angels than we know. We don't need to be able to do more diligence. We don't need to be deeper experts in some area. If we are picking from credible deals, we'll talk about that in a second, we are already better angels than we know. That's hard to get your head around from a math perspective and even from a intuitive perspective. And this is where I know I have an advantage because I'm a founder. So first, I'm going to talk about that for a little bit, but first I want to start off, I'm saying this term credible bets. What I think is really great about how early stage capital has evolved is that us as individual angels, there are plenty of opportunities to actually write a first check into a founder. And I know most of us will end up doing that someday because it'll be a friend or someone we've known for a long time or believe in deeply. But for the most part, though, we can also go through as angel investors, investing, the second check in companies that are already well vetted and have taken a check from a pre-seed investor or a super angel, someone who does this for a living, someone who sees so much deal flow and knows how to match patterns and industries. Those people see 300 deals for every check they write. And us as angels can increasingly draft a little bit on their coattails and know that when we look at a company, it's been vetted to some extent and it is a credible company. So if you're operating in that space, it's still really early days with a company. There's not going to be a lot of data points on that company. And sometimes that's frustrating, right? Because our natural tendency is, right? We've been trained to think like VCs. We want to dig in and do all this diligence, and we need to know things and ask all of these questions. And I'm going to tell you something, as someone who has been an early stage founder for 12 years, at that early stage of a company, there is actually like only so many data points. As a founder at that early stage, I mean, your job is like, you've got to pick a big enough problem space to play in and then run at it head on with a mix of resilience and luck and constant adjustment. Everything about a pre-seed and even a seed stage company that you see right now when they pitch you, it's probably going to change. Everything's going to change except the founding team and the founder. Because it comes at you that quickly. And I know that's an easier thing for me to realize because I've been in that arena for the last 12 years. My startup Apostrophe, the one I sold, we were at Series A and had grown to 10 million in ARR. And you know what? We were still pivoting and changing because we saw a bigger opportunity. We were going to change up our whole business at 10 million in annual revenue, because that's the nature of startups. That's our job as founders. Keep pivoting and learning to find that biggest opportunity, which makes it tough on angels if they're thinking about, I need to know everything about this business and be really sure about it before writing that check. Because there's just not that many data points, which is why this math was so exciting to me, because it was telling me, you know what I knew as a founder was also right as an investor. We're already a better angel than they know, because you just can't pick any smarter. Your best intuition is actually a great gauge of where you should invest. Because while there's not a lot of data points about startups, where there are a million data points is in our intuition and in our guts. This is why as human beings, we feel before we think. That feeling we have is based on millions of data points. Like as an angel, that feeling you have about a company is based on millions of data points on problems you've seen in the world and how big you think those opportunities are because of your lived experience. They rely on your logic and judgment as a business person, again, based on decades of experience. And your understanding of a founding team, if that is the most important ingredient in an early stage company, as a human being, you've judged people, you've interacted with people your whole life. You feel before you think, and you're a better angel than you know, because you have all those data points, and those data points actually matter, because there's not a lot of other data you can look at that does. And if you make enough shots on goal, portfolio theory comes to effect. The same way that you invest in an ETF on the public market. This for me was a enormous breakthrough as an angel investment, because it told me if I angel invested in a certain way, I did have enough knowledge to make this a high performing asset class for me. And it gave me confidence to start acting and learning while doing. So now as an angel, it gave me the permission to develop my angel style by investing and getting in the game. It was super empowering. So for me, my angel style has evolved and is continuing to evolve around just two things, actually. I ask myself two questions when I see a founder pitch. First, I say, if everything goes right, can this be a 25x business that I wake up to be excited to be a part of every day? I'm looking at business potential. and I'm looking at what matters to me. And I want to be excited about the companies I invest in. It's part of what makes this an asset class that gives joy and doesn't just, produce returns. Second question I ask is, when everything goes wrong, is this founder resilient enough to figure it out? That's it. Now, I'm learning more about different business models. I'm seeing more founders. I'm learning as I go, but I'm refining those internal data points in my gut. And then I'm trying to understand them in my process. That gave me permission to just start acting and writing checks and learn as I go, but it was all based in that math. And it felt super, super empowering. And I'll leave it at that. What I'd love, though, this was a lot of information I gave. There's some math in there, there's some gut feel, there's some of experience as me that I uniquely have as a founder. I'm going to talk about my second question of where was I going to get the dang money to be an angel investor, because that wasn't crystal clear to me when I started. But before I do that, I would love to take questions on what I talked about already. Portfolio construction, picking companies, angel style. Any questions? People following me think I'm crazy?
And if anyone has a question and instead of typing it out into the chat, you just want to unmute yourself and ask it. I think we're a small enough group that we can do that. And just so you know, Cheryl, I think people have been just very captivated listening. I haven't seen a lot of questions yet in the chat. Let's see. Oh, ooh, here's one that just came in. Okay, how do you see this as a position in a broader diversified portfolio?
I am going to talk about that next, so I'm going to hold on that question. I actually have a chart for that.
Oh, and here's my. Oh yeah, sorry. Do you see that, Cheryl? You can read.
Yeah, what's your patience and expected timeline for expected return? I'm going to talk about that a little next too, when I talk about my angel budget. But this is early stage investing. You should not expect to see money out for 10 to 12 years. If you set that as your expectation, if something exits early in 7 years or 5 years, you'll be thrilled. If something takes a little longer, you'll be ready for it. This is a long-term hold game for sure.
Hi, Cheryl. This is Anza. Sorry, did I interrupt you? Or we?
Yep. Go.
Yeah, I just had a question. How do you gauge with founders whether they're willing to accept baby checks? How do you approach that conversation with them?
Great question. I've sourced part of my deal flow through angel groups, and a lot of founders that pitch angel groups will have one of two investment vehicles set up. One's called a special purpose vehicle. One's called a roll-up vehicle. They're pretty much the same thing. They're an investment vehicle that can take a whole bunch of smaller checks in it, but show up as a single line on the cap table. So founders doing that, there's no reason for them not to take checks as small as $1,000. There's no harm or foul to them for taking small checks. And founders are increasingly doing that because founders are increasingly learning that those small checks often lead to important introductions or bigger checks. Or, I mean, honestly, for me, my smallest angels were some of the best people on my cap table, because even in the crappiest days of being a founder, I would send out a monthly update, and those were the people on my cap table that replied back to cheer me on. And I loved them. They saved me on my worst days. So many founders have one of those vehicles open. If not, you can ask them if they'll take a small check. I just had 4 different investments take me as a check directly on the cap table for $1,500. Just because I think we've got to be careful as angels. I mean, you guys all know my investment framework now. This is not, I'm not grinding the founder through, hours of diligence. I have probably spent as a founder 10,000 hours on the phone with first-time angels and small checks it's not a great use of their time. So because their time is, they've got to move a business forward. So you can definitely ask directly and they'll gauge it based on, you know, how great you've been during the diligence process, how much they think you can help them long term. It seems like there's no cost to put you directly on the cap table, but as the company grows over time, having a lot of individuals on that cap table does become an administrative overload. So it's not zero effect on them, if that makes sense. Often just ask though.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
and there's a few questions in the chat, Cheryl, about SPVs, just people kind of generally not understanding how they work or having questions about the tax implications. And then there is another question about valuation and equity ask. So those are the kind of two.
Yep. So yeah, when you are a small check, whether you're investing in an SPV or directly on the cap table, the founder is going to tell you what those terms are. And those terms are usually negotiated between them and some bigger investor that is already invested. There's not a lot of negotiation on terms you should do as a small check angel. That's, I would say, you know, a founder, if I have an angel on there you know, with a smaller check negotiating that doesn't have some big strategic value to my company, and they're trying to negotiate different terms or pro rata or this or that, I would take a step back as an angel and say, is this the most productive use of this founder's time to grow their business and be a huge outcome for me? So I would say that the founder is going to set those terms, and they're really setting them based on what some bigger investor, some professional investor, more experienced investor has helped them set for their company. And I really encourage just to not try to negotiate it, because then the founder's spending time doing the wrong things. And to me, like, going to sound pretty crappy, but that's a red flag on the founder.
Right. No, that's such a great answer, Cheryl. And then, okay, so SPVs. So
Yep.
just people, so kind of, again, questions, what is a small check? Like, you know, so what is that range that could come in on an SPV? And then what is the paperwork required, like tax implications,
Yep.
if you are the investor investing on that SPV?
I don't want to go too deeply into tax, but it's going to look the same as if you invested. Tax implications are the same as if you invested directly in the company. Most founders will do an SPV or an RUV, one of these roll-up vehicles. They'll do it through Sidecar or Carta or AngelList. They'll do it through a known platform. You will be investing in the same terms as people directly on the cap table. The only difference is on like an SPV, there might be someone organizing that SPV. There might be a little fee to do the filings, the legal filings for the SPV. And there might be this concept of carry, which is the person organizing the SPV will get some of the profits when the company exits. You'll get your money back as an investor. The person organizing the SPV will take a little bit of the profits, and then you'll get the rest of the profits as the investor. They're really common vehicles. We should probably do a session to explain them more fully. And that was, you know, just not my goal today to get into the nitty gritties of this. It's important to understand the nitty gritties. I'm talking about the not nitty gritties because the things I wanted to talk about are the things that prevent us in our minds and in our guts from moving forward writing the check. We should do a session on all of these particulars, because coming into angel investing, I mean, you want to feel like you know what these things are and that you're smart about how you're using them. But on the tax implications, it's going to look like you invested directly on the cap table. If there's a liquidity event and there's a payout, you'll get a K1. On an SPV or an RUV, AngelList or Sidecar or Carta, whatever platform that vehicle was on, will issue that K1 to you. And the great news is these take such a long time to come to fruition. They even take a long time to fail. So you can write your first checks and not see anything hit back then. So there's some knowledge you can sort of catch up on as you go.
Okay, and someone
What other
answered
questions are here?
small checks around 1,000. I think they can be as small as 500 in play money.
If play money, we're doing 500. Yes, we are. But on Angel List and other places, the typical small size is 1,000. But small is different for everyone. I have friends who their small checks are 10,000. They have more capital than I do. They didn't spend the last 12 years being a startup founder and having 4 kids. they made different choices, maybe wiser. So yes. There's a question here if someone said, not what I expected. Thought you were going to talk about how to determine if a startup is investable based on their attraction, valuation, terms versus your portfolio size and gut. I want to address that because that's sort of at the core of this issue. You can look at all those things as an early stage investor, and you should. But there's so much you're not going to know, right? I mean, you want to see some traction, but what does traction mean? An early check might be, gosh, we ran a successful beta, or we got feedback from this certain market. As an early stage founder, if that is in the pre-seed or seed stage, my guess that's going to change over time. What part of the market they're really serving, where they really get market pull. Like before a company really reaches really solid product market fit and really has figured out their channels, so they're in the scaling phase, a lot of that early stuff is going to change. I definitely look at valuations. Valuations matter at early stage, right? How are you going to get it to 25x? It's different if something starts off at a 10x, a $10 million valuation versus a 30. And I've also broken my own rules there. I just wrote a check into an early stage company the other day that had a $20 million valuation on, because I could see the revenue trajectory they were on, and I heard the lessons they've learned along the way. And I was like, these girls have got it. I'm going to make a bet there. And if that bet turns out to be wrong, it's one of many bets in this portfolio. So I don't know if that probably doesn't feel like a satisfying answer. Everyone develops their own angel style. I definitely have friends that only invest in industries they know. That is a totally valid style, totally valid criteria. It will not change the portfolio math and shots on goal. I'm going to jump in on this. How do we use our IRA to write the check? What resources can we leverage to spot deals that do accept small checks? I would say join angel groups. Find a group that feels like your tribe of folks that you want to learn from and hang out with. I know the Fourth Effect has their backroom group. I love the Council, a group of female operator angels. I started out with Hustle Fund's Angel Squad. I've seen some deal flow through Gangels. There's just a growing number of groups, both paid and free. You'll see deals come through, and a lot of those groups have, founders looking to fill out their round with individual angels, and will accept smaller checks either directly or because they have one of those vehicles. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so there was a question here about IRA, and we've got about 20 minutes left. And so I want to talk about this next piece here, right? It's really awesome that I could say, build a portfolio of 30 angel bets every year, super duper. But 10 to 15 investments every year for at least 3 to 5 years to build that diversified portfolio without thinking twice about it is hard. I don't know about you, but I didn't exit my last company with a warehouse full of money. That's a lot of commitment. So thinking about your angel budget, and for me, figuring out my angel budget was sort of the next step once I realized I knew enough to be able to write checks and I could build this into an asset class and not lottery tickets. So here's what I would say about setting your angel budget. And I geek out on math here too, trying to make it simple, but not make it financial advice. So a modern portfolio manager today would say anywhere between 15 and 25% of your total assets should be in alternative assets. I'm hearing people go up to 30% now. Conventional wisdom is maybe half of that can be startups, 5 to 12% in startups, depending how much you love startups. Startups are a bigger part of my portfolio because I live and breathe them every day. I think maybe if I was like, you know, a neurosurgeon or I don't know, a lawyer, they might be closer to 5 or 10% of my portfolio, but that's a healthy range. And startups are legit alternative assets that are not correlated when you make the investment with public markets. When I think about budgeting for angel, though, I think beyond just my pure financial portfolio perspective, because the ROI I get, the return on investment I get from angel investment goes so far beyond investment returns. So when I created my angel budget, I also pulled from my professional development budget. I pulled a little bit from my social budget. I have come to pull from my shopping budget. So do I need those new shoes or do I want that new startup? Anyone that follows me on social media knows that I went on a little Black Friday shopping spree and wrote a few checks into some amazing founders that I was super stoked about. And I pull a little bit from my activism budget and my philanthropy budget. Not because investing is philanthropy, but because I've been able to invest in founders that are solving problems aligned with the causes I care about. My biggest angel check, where I broke all my rules and wrote a 10x check, is into a founder who has the first non-surgical diagnostic for endometriosis. I could donate to the Endo Society of America, or I could write a bigger angel check, and I chose the bigger angel check. So I encourage you to think about this from a portfolio management perspective, but also from a human portfolio and what you want out of your next year and how you want to budget your money there. That still did not leave me with enough money to make 10 to 15 angel bets a year, every year for the next 3 or 5 years. Until I realized I had money hiding in plain sight and it was sitting in my dang IRA. All those little dollars I had put away over the past few decades were this pot of money just sitting there with real angel-like characteristics, right? The money was untouchable. Was I going to get a payback in 7 years, 10 years, 12 years? I don't care. I can't touch that money for a while. It was evergreen. I keep contributing it to it every year like a good little doobie, and there was a pile of it always there. Sweet. And one of the biggest things for me was that money was bringing me no joy. I started angel investing with a dumb rollover IRA from a job I had at Adobe a million years ago. That was like in some, like, I don't know, stock market index ETF. I could repurpose that to become this learning tool and this connection tool and this creation tool. And that was super fun. So I will say here, angel investing is already a super tax advantage investing. And someone with an infinite amount of capital would definitely tell you, maybe don't angel invest from your retirement funds. You can use those funds to invest in assets that are less tax advantage and use non-retirement money to invest in more tax advantage angel investing. But for those of us who have capital with these characteristics sitting in retirement funds, this is a great option. And over the past year, it has become a much easier option. A year and a half ago, it was super hard. You had to do a whole bunch of weird financial stuff and set up own accounts with these crazy old-fashioned custodians to be able to invest in alternative assets with your retirement funds. Now there's 2 companies that I love, and I've worked with both of them. One is Alto, the other is called Carry. they let you take money in an existing IRA with a traditional custodian like Fidelity, roll it into them as the custodian, and then make startup investments. Alto is really great for getting started with if you're not sure if you love angel investing and you just want to try it out. Carry is super great if you are a freak about all sorts of really cool alternative investments or have your own solo 401k or generally a geek about that kind of stuff. I don't want to go into that. So here's where it left me. And I want to open time for more questions, but the portfolio math was a huge unlock to me on I have the knowledge and angel doesn't have to be this I'm going to lose all my money bet. I could build an asset class and not just buy lottery tickets. That was the big unlock, the first big unlock for me. The second big unlock for me is I had money to do this hiding in plain sight. And it was easier to put that money to work in angel than I thought because of folks like Alto IRA and Carry Money had made it super easy. But the last piece was 15 investments a year is hard. So here's where I do my shameless pitch for Play Money. We have built a platform to make that 15 investments less hard. We make it easy to build your dream startup portfolio with less than an hour a week and as little as the money in your IRA each year. We are sourcing deals from the most exciting emerging fund managers and high velocity angel groups. So they are well vetted deals. And we're presenting 2 deals customized to you each week. So you can talk about them with a group of friends like it was book club. You can do it on your own. You can do it with your partner. We had so many people in our beta like, I'm sitting down and looking at deals in bed with my partner at night. You know, this is really fun. So we're building a platform to make this style of portfolio construction possible for those of us who don't have the time to make angel a full-time job. But so that we can benefit from angel as an asset class and first check calls game. Let's choose the problems that get solved and who gets to solve them. I think you have the URL for Play Money. And I want to open it up to questions, but I'm throwing this QR code up here. If you scan this code or go to the Play Money site under reading list, all the geeky math I talked about is linked there. There's a portfolio modeler, there's stuff with calculus in it, there's stuff with graphs in it, for those of you that want to see and feel the numbers. I hope none of you are like that and can just accept knowledge at this level, because once you get on that rabbit hole, it's a full-time job in itself. All right, with that, any other questions or comments or ways people are thinking about their own angel investing differently? Or want to share your own angel style? I want people to talk.
I can share something. You know, I just came out of a group called Founder Pitch Week. And even though I've invested a lot of money in my own company and I have a lot of angel investors and I'm raising again, I found a handful or 2 of those founders that I met that I ended up knowing, liking, and trusting, and loved what they were building. And I've made some many small investments in them as a result. And again, I'm a lawyer by trade, and I used to make a decent amount of money. So I started my angel investing really early on. But for those of you that were asking about traction and things like that, you really need to start like observing and watching, and then you can make a more educated decision about where you want to put your 1,000 or 2,500 or 5,000. So as a result, obviously I have way over 30 investments now, because I forgot I invested in sweater too. So
Yep.
but I think that's the way, other than my own company, which I totally believe in 100%. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be GC for a large tech company. I think, that's the way to go as an angel investor.
Yep. I think your point about watching and looking and seeing a bunch of deals to develop that style is really important. I mean, I'm a founder and I watched, like you, I watched for probably almost 9 months. And even now, I may be like one of 30 deals I see. That does not mean the others are bad. It means what's resonating with me, what's pulling me down a path I want to learn on, what's giving me a founder and a problem space I am super excited every morning about when I wake up. And I've passed on deals where I think the founder is amazing and I think she's going to build an amazing business, but it's not my deal. And that's the joy of being an angel investor.
By the way, Cheryl,
We've
there
got-
is a question that's popped up twice about tax implications. If your investment fails, can you write it off as a loss? I don't know if you want to speak.
Yes, you can write it off as a loss. Particularly, like if you're not in your retirement account, right? Retirement accounts, it's all just a pool of money. But yes, you can write it off as a loss. In fact, if you were one of the first investors into the company when it was brand new, you can write some of that loss off against W-2 income. Additionally, if you're investing outside of a retirement account, you can write off the losses, sometimes as W-2 income, always against other capital gains. Additionally, there's a tax rule called QSBS, Qualified Small Business Stock. And if you invest in the company when it is below $50 million in valuation, which is where most angels are playing, and you hold stock in that company, hold equity in the company for 5 years or more, you don't pay any federal capital gains on it whatsoever. It's an amazing rule. You have to do tracking. You have to track these investments pretty well to know that, but it's a really cool thing that not a lot of people know. But that was what I was referring to when I said angel is very tax advantaged already. My best, here's my secret site where I learn all my geeky stuff. I learn a lot of my geeky stuff here is Carry Money. It used to be called Ocho Wealth. Their CEO, Ankur, tweets great fintech geek out advice and tax advice all the time. Carry is where I have my solo 401k and they're my go-to source. So if you're looking for an external resource to get started to think and learn about these things, they're a great place to go. Learning goes a lot faster if you're in the game too. So once I started investing, I started learning all this stuff faster because it became more valid. And so I was doing sort of multiple points of learning as I was going. I love this question here. Can I ask you this one? What about having an investment thesis, both focusing on investment in one sector? Everyone's got to develop their own angel style. And I think it's great to have a thesis because it helps you sort through the world of what you're looking for. I personally don't have a single sector thesis because I want a diverse portfolio. But that's my preference. I think it's absolutely fine to go femtech, fintech. If you believe in a space and then want to sample broadly from it, I think that's amazing. And it's also a great way to develop, obviously, your own deal flow because you're really focused on what you're looking for. That is super awesome. It makes it easier for people to find you. It'll give you a real great sense of like what a great company looks like in that space over time. So I love that. For me, that's not my personal cup of tea. I actually have a certain founder style and vibe I like that cuts across industries. Yeah, Carry Money IO. Yep. I think that's a new URL. It used to be Ocho Wealth. Sharing all my big secrets here.
There's such good secrets.
What else? Any more questions or comments? Well, I love to see when people have confidence in their own angel style because any angel style is completely valid, particularly in the construct of a portfolio strategy. Like, as long as you're doing that, you can pick the angel style that makes you feel the best and gets you most excited and gives you the kind of learning you want.
Yeah, I love that. I love it so much because, you know, so much of what we're constantly running up against, especially when you think about sitting on a board and am I qualified to sit in a board, and, you know, should I put myself out there for that position? A lot of people have imposter syndrome. They second guess. They feel like I need to first be, I'm not saying I'm qualified, but a lot of times, you know, rocket science isn't rocket science. A lot of times, like, you are qualified, like you're discounting your own reasons why you bring value. And so I love that kind of overarching bigger point. Like, it's not necessarily wizardry. I mean, maybe it is because it's in your gut. But we all have a gut. Like, we all have a little wizard inside. So can we?
We're deep sorceresses, right? We're witches.
Right. So can we?
And that's hard earned.
That little wizard and trust it and feel empowered to do this, because, you know, that fear has not been holding back a lot of people that have made a lot of money over the last, you know, how many hundreds of years doing this. So, like, or whatever long it's been. So, like, what are we waiting for?
Exactly. What are you waiting for?
I love it.
All right.
Okay, well, this was just
I think it's a wrap.
fantastic, Cheryl.